Hey everyone, it's Jake of Jake's Metal Chat. Hope you're all well and welcome to episode 96 of my Metal Vault, where I will be exploring and showing you my favorite albums within the world of metal. As well as talking about the albums, I'll also be talking about the band, so a brief history and any releases leading up to the album that I have picked. And I do apologize for the sound of my voice. I did do a lot of shouting at Bloodstock, and of course, I'm absolutely exhausted at the moment because I did go out for my walk and it feels more than 32, 33 degrees at the moment. And speaking of that, the album that I will be showing you is what I was playing on my walk. And I saw these guys back in 2012 after Bloodstock. And this album right here, an absolute monstrous piece of early 90s death metal and is an absolute must for fans of old school death metal. And this is a band I've only seen once, as I mentioned earlier. I saw them in 2012, and I hope to see them again. And this album, if you don't have it already, go and get it. It's an absolute beast of an album. And of course, I will have it in the description below, a link to the album so you can go and listen for yourselves. So without further ado, here is Gorguts with their 1991 debut, Considered Dead. And what an absolute beast monster of an album, and just some excellent death metal. There's the guys on the back, all the songs, of course, was released on RC Records back in the day. And I will show you the vinyl as well as the lyric sheet. I'll show you the vinyl first because this is a limited edition one. It is so let me rephrase that. It is a re-release with a limited edition vinyl, which is this red one. Very nice indeed. And of course, got a bit of the artwork there with the logo on both sides. And of course, let's get this back in before I show the lyric sheet off. Trying to re-sleeve an album on camera is a bit tricky. Got a lyric sheet there. And the band there as well. Another band picture. Yeah, when I saw these guys for the first time, it was here, of course, in Bristol in 2012. And one of the bands that was playing Bloodstock was Separation, which is of course, a death thrash metal band who I have mentioned here on the channel before. Seeing these guys was awesome. And yeah, I definitely need to see these guys again because that show when they played the Croft here was just absolutely brilliant stuff. A brilliant live, and yeah, still going strong today. Show the picture once again, like how Luke is wearing a Disharmonic Orchestra t-shirt. That's another band that I still need to get their collection, still need to get their albums. And of course, before I get on to the songs on the back here, let's talk about the band themselves. Gorguts. So they originally formed in Sherbrooke in 1989, which is, I believe, no, a city on its own. I did look it up earlier. I was going to say it's part of Quebec, but no, they moved to Montreal later, which, of course, Montreal, Quebec in Canada. So formed in 1989, split up in 2005, and they reformed in 2008. And they are currently on Season of Mist. And to begin with, they were just death metal, and nowadays they are technical avant-garde death metal, so a bit more progressive sounding. But back then, they were just straight up fierce, in your face death metal. And in the year of 1989, they did release 2 demos. And the only original member left of this band is the vocalist and guitarist himself, Luke LeMay, which I will show you once again. Of course, the one with the Disharmonic Orchestra shirt. And the first demo was released on the 25th of February 1989. It was an independent release. There's only 2 tracks on here. And if it's on YouTube, I'll definitely be listening to it. And the next one is a pre-production advanced track demo from the same year of 1989. This was November, another independent release, so it's only 1 track. And then on to their 1990 demo, and then comes the Vidity, which was released in June of 1990. And I have listened to this demo years back now here on YouTube, and it is one hell of a great demo. And then we get on to Considered Dead, which was released on the 8th of October 1991 on RC Records. And the lineups that were on the demos on so the first 2 demos, to quickly go back to them, their bass player at that time was Colo, who was in 2 other bands as well as Gorguts, and was only on those 2 demos in 1989. And then in 1990, that was And Then Comes the Vidity, has Eric on bass. And of course, the lineup on that demo is on this album. So the other members, apart from Luc Lemay and Eric, we have Sylvain and Stefan. So Sylvain is on guitar and Stefan is on the drums. So that is the lineup of the band there. And of course, on this album, there is 2 guest members. So we have Chris Bonds, who did tracks 5, 6, and 9 as for backing vocals, and then James Murphy for lead guitar on track 10. And as for those who worked on the album, so Luke May did the design and logo. Of course, this logo right here, my absolute favorite logo of theirs. And then we have here, so I got her name on the notes, Patricia Mooney. Patricia Mooney. I did say that wrong, so I do apologize. So I'll rephrase that again. So Patricia Mooney, who has done art direction for this album, as well as for Death, Deicide, Immolation, Obituary, Pestilence, and so many more bands. I go on the name so I can tell you which album she worked on. So for Death was Symbolic, Deicide was the debut album, and Legion, of course, for Gorguts right here. Immolation, Dawn of Possession, and then also done compilations for Motorhead. Cause of Death and the Incomplete by Obituary, Testimony of the Ancients by Pestilence, and for the art direction for Sepultura's Arise, and for Typo Negatives, Slow, Deep and Hard, and Bloody Kisses. And of course, the artwork, as we all know, was done by the legend that is Dan Seagrave, who I've mentioned countless times on this series. But just a little recap, he has done it for, of course, Morbid Angel and Benediction, Body Farm, Carnage, and Decrepit Birth, Dismember, Entombed, and the list just goes on and on. Just name one more here, Hypocrisy. And then for, obviously, of course, producer, engineering, and mixing, of course, that's Scott Burns. Mastering by Michael, which he's done albums for bands such as Nuclear Assault, Sepultura, and Sorrow, and Type of Negative. And then Jean-Pierre did the photography, so this one and the one on the lyrics sheet. And that's who did, of course, the logo, art direction, artwork, producing, engineering, mixing, mastering for this album. Because this artwork here absolutely just sums up this entire album. And this, yeah, love this artwork. One of my favorite pieces of Dan Seagraves, and yeah, absolutely brilliant artist. One of my favorites within the world of metal. And let's get on with the songs on this. So there are 10 tracks overall. So this whole album from start to finish, just crushing guitars, bass, and drums. And yeah, monstrous vocals by Luke LeMay. And when I was listening to it on my walk, just an absolute powerhouse of an album. And it starts off with the instrumental, and then comes Lividity. Nice acoustic opening, like nice melodic opening, which then sets you up for what is to come. With the first song here, which is the second track on the album, so that is Stiff and Cold, which is a favorite of mine on the album. Just absolutely just kicking everything off. And those guitars, the bass, the drums, everything just from the start is just absolutely stupidly heavy. And then we get on to Disincarnated. Again, just still bringing that absolute, brutality to an already heavy album. And because if you heard this album, you know how heavy it is. And then you get on to track number 4, which is the title track, Considered Dead. Just all the same, the vocals, the guitars, the bass, and the drums. Absolutely just insane stuff right here. And then getting on to my other favorite track number 5, which is Rotanatomy, which has a really chunky bass opening, which is what made it one of my favorite tracks because of that bass opening alone. And then getting Luke LeMay just growls in there and absolutely brings it absolutely just to top it all off with the guitars and the bass and drums. Everything put together, I've mentioned with so many albums before, it's just bringing that absolute just brutality and just absolutely, when you hear it, you're like, fuck, this is just heavy. And then we get on to Bodily Corrupted, still bringing that brutality, that heaviness, and the guitars are still crushing, the bass is still crushing, and the drums are just as crushing and heavy as ever, still going strong. And then we get to the next instrumental, Waste of Mortality, just to give you a bit of a break until it goes back into another heavy number. And that's what I liked about this album and what I like about Gorguts. When you listen to the next lot of albums, obviously working a bit more with that melodicism in there. Of course, the Erosion of Sanity, which is the one after this album, definitely still a heavy record and still need to find. And of course, continuing on from this album that I'm talking about right now. But yeah, definitely like how they mixed melodicism with just pure heaviness here. And then we're getting on to Drifting Remains. So carrying on from where Stiff and Cold started. Almost went over my words there. Still bringing those monstrous vocals and the absolute powerful, crushing guitars, bass, and drums. And the solo work on this entire album from where it, do you need to find the lineup again? From Savan is just absolutely just brilliant stuff right there. And then we got on to Hematological Allergy. Again, another track that definitely, when I was listening to it on my walk earlier and when I heard it the first time, just still bringing that absolute monstrous sound to this already monstrous album. And then we get on to the last track, which is the one that features James Murphy's lead guitar work, Inoculated Life. And when you hear James Murphy's guitar, he's got that very distinct sound. And yeah, as always, delivers, and yeah, just adding another extra layer to that song. And of course, tracks number, let's get the tracks up again for Chris Bonds, 5, 6, and 9. And when you hear Chris Bonds, especially back in 1991 and how low his vocals were then, adding that layer on to those tracks, so to rot anatomy, bodily corrupted, and hematological allergy. And yeah, inoculating life, just bringing an absolute end to this album, to just an absolute perfect end. And yeah, definitely an album that everybody needs in their collection. And of course, I heard this so many times before. I actually had it in my collection, and getting it on vinyl is just, yeah. This vinyl, when I played it, I just played it on my player at the back there. Yeah, plays really well. And of course, I do need to get the CD and a cassette version. Of course, like Shaun the Beast and Mark the Bowser Retribution being collector's scum, need all formats. And yeah, definitely an album. If I was to do a list of my favorite albums of 1991, this will be in that list for absolute sure. And of course, in my favorite death metal albums list, which I still need to do again. But yeah, this album, what else can I say about it other than it's heavy, it's just fierce, it's in your face, and it's absolutely pounding. And the vocals, guitars, bass, drums, just crushing and heavy. And yeah, it's a timeless masterpiece, a timeless classic. And so many albums that I've spoken about on here are timeless classics. This definitely is one of those albums. And I know there's been a lot of you watching this series, and I know there's going to be fans of primarily death metal, and then maybe some of you watching who are not really a fan of death metal, or those who are like listen to it and didn't really like it to begin with, but you want to find an album that is going to get you into death metal. I believe this might be the one for you, because there are really those who are more into the heavy metal, or into the thrash, or to the black metal, or do more sludge metal. But I know there's a lot of you out there who really love death metal, and you've not heard this one, and you are a death metal fan, definitely go and check this out. It is just an absolute powerhouse of early 90s death metal. And yeah, these guys here did an absolutely excellent job with their roles in this album, with again with those guitars, the vocals, the drums, the bass, and Scott Burns, of course, doing a great job with his side by producing it, engineering it, and mixing it. And of course, there's a lot of albums by Scott Burns that I do own. This, and of course, Morbid Angel. No, he didn't work on Morbid Angel. Entombed and Dismember. But yeah, definitely an album that I always find it hard to talk about. I know that's been talked about so many times before, but it's just one hell of a phenomenal album, and it's one that, again, if you are a fan of death metal, and to me, and I think to a lot of other us, a lot of a lot of us in the VC, that's what I was trying to say, is an essential album for death metal fans out there. If you're a hardcore death metal fan and you don't have this, do go get it. It is an absolute belter of an album. One of my absolute favorites from 1991, and which is the year I was born. Of course, this came out a month before I was even born, but an album I love nonetheless. And we'll definitely be giving this another spin. And I might do that a little bit later on this evening. Gorguts and Considered Dead. Let's get that ready over here. And that is it for this episode of My Metal Vault. I hope you enjoyed it and have enjoyed this series so far. 96 episodes, almost at 100 episodes. And of course, for my 100th episode will be an absolute essential release of thrash metal, just one of the best thrash metal albums out there. And you'll probably know which one that is. But until then, until I get to that episode, because I've got a load more to do, because I've got two more albums that are on here that I'm going to be recording in this week and into next week. So I hope you enjoyed this series and this video. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video and this series so far. And if you do like this series, give this video a like, share it around, comment down below, and if you enjoy my content overall, don't forget to subscribe and keep up to date with everything that I got coming up. So I got two more My Metal Vaults to do. I got my next parts of my favorite metal releases of 2025. My preview video for the next festival that's happening here in Bristol. And of course, collection updates to come. So until then, I've been Jacob Jake's Metal Chat. Keep the banner of metal well and truly high. And I will see you all in another episode of My Metal Vault. Please do take care of yourselves.